All right, guys. So like I mentioned before, we're gonna do video lectures for this week, for most of it anyways, because I'll be off on a conference. But don't forget that you could always email me and I'll respond that way. And then if need be, we can arrange to meet up for office hours too. So keep that in mind. And so today we're gonna do 8.1. I'm gonna do the first part and then I'll record the second part because the second part is taxes, and so it'll take a little longer and it needs additional information. You'll see in a bit. But first, before we get into taxes, we need to know how to convert fractions to decimals to percents and any variations thereof. So let's start with that. So first off, if you're given a fraction, we need to be able to convert that to decimals. And finally, from there, we can convert that to percents. So ultimately, we can convert fractions to percents as well. So let's start with something simple. So let me write that down. So say we have 3/4, and we want to convert that to decimals. So by definition, fractions are divisions, right? So you just do 3 divided by 4 to get the decimal. And you could punch it into your calculator, or it's an easy enough calculation for us to do by hand. So just to review, we put a decimal there because 4 does not go into 3. We add a 0. 4 goes into 30 7 times, and 7 times 4 is 28. And the remainder is 2. Bring down another 0 because we're going to go into the next place value. And then finally, 4 times 5 equals 20. So when we actually do that division, 3 divided by 4 equals 0.75. Okay, so now we have this fraction in terms of the decimal, but we want to put this decimal in terms of a percent, right? So if we start off with 0.75 as our decimal, how do we make that into a percent? We just multiply this by 100, and we add the percent sign. So in other words, 0.75 is equal to 75%. Right, so whenever you multiply by 100, you can think of that instead of explicitly saying multiply by 100, which it is the process. You could just move the decimal places 2 places over, right? And that's the same thing as multiplying by 100, because if you do 75, 100, you'll get, multiply, multiply, then you get 7,500, and then there's 2 decimal places, right? So you'll get 75 regardless of how you attack the problem. So 3/4, going back to the original, 3/4 equals 0.75, which equals 75%. And just to give you, I don't know everybody's background, so we'll just cover this. Percent just means per 100, right? Because cent, as in century, is 100. So if we want to look at, so using the same example, let's say we were given 75% and we wanted to convert that into decimals and fractions and so on. So we could do, since it's percent, instead of writing the percent sign, we do per 100. Okay, and that'll give you the fraction. And you can, of course, simplify it because these have a lot of common factors, but that's the easiest way to write a percent into a fraction. And also, if we were given that percent and we wanted to write it as a decimal, whereas before we moved the decimal place to the right 2 places, so to undo that, we move it to the left 2 places. So 75%, if we move that to the left twice, it's 0.75. Okay, just keep in mind that when you're converting from percent, to take out the percent sign. So it's 75% is not equal to 0.75%, it's just equal to 0.75. Okay, so that's the basics of converting fractions to decimals to percents, and then percents to fractions, or percents to decimals. And of course, down here, like we were just saying, you could simplify this, right? Because it'll be 3/4 if you divide through by 25. Okay, so let's go on to an example. So the first one that I have here is that the sales tax is 7.5%, and the bicycle costs, it's $894. Right, so how do we use this percentage to calculate tax and also the total cost? So let me create some space here. And let's go with the tax first. Okay, so the cost of the bike is $894. And now we're going to use the information. So 7.5%, right? So if we have 7.5%, we need to convert that to decimals so we can multiply here. So move the decimal place 2 places over, so it becomes 0.075 as our decimal, and that's what we multiply. Oops, I forgot the 0. 0.075, and that's what's going to give you the cost of tax. Okay, or just the tax price. How much money is going to be added on to your original cost, right? So I'm going to let you do that on your calculator. And then finally, the tax, so $894 times 0.075, which will give you the tax part, plus the original price is going to give you the total cost. Right, because this is the tax that's added on to the price, and that'll give you your total. On the other hand, so the number 2 that I have here, if you could see, is suppose that, so we have the same situation for 1, and your bike was on sale for 10% off, right? So we have to, not only do we have to calculate sales tax, and we'll do that at the end, we're going to discount it first. So the cost is $894, but it's at 10% off, right? So if it's a discount, we should be subtracting. And the discount amount is found by doing $894, which is the original price, and then 10% is 0.1 or 0.10, right? It doesn't matter which way you have it. So that's what we call the discount amount. That's how much money will be taken out of the price before you pay for it. So let's see. $894 minus $89.40, when you multiply these out, is going to give you now the discounted price. Price for bike. Right? And if we were to have the same thing, once you get the discounted price, we could plug that price back into here. So instead of having $894, you would have the price that was, you would have $894 minus $89.40, and you would plug those in here to calculate the sales tax. So as you can see, the tax amount is going to be smaller because you're going to be taking multiplication of something that's smaller with a percentage, right? You're taking a same percentage, but with a smaller amount. So overall, the tax is going to be smaller that you pay because it's proportional to the cost. Okay, so I'm going to leave that up to you, but for this section, all we're covering is the fraction, decimal to percent, and then how to calculate taxes and discounts, right? Although the process is very similar, you multiply by the percentage amount, make sure that if it's a discount that you subtract it, and if it's a tax that you add it. Okay, so what we know in common everyday life is what we're calculating, so just make sure that it makes sense in terms of the problem. Okay, all right, we'll go on to the next video lecture.